Welcome, friends and family, to another episode of the Backdoor Cut Show. You're listening courtesy of the Barn Burner Podcast Network, which you can find on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts. Also, big thank you to everyone following us on Periscope right now on the Barn Burner Twitter handle. With me today, I'm Zach. You can find me on Twitter at BarnBurnerBro. With me today, I have one of our writers over at the barn, Josh Pyers. You can find him on Twitter at JoshPyers7. And we're going to talk some college hoops today, some Memphis versus UConn. Went to UConn, so got plenty of experience up there, and is going to give us a rundown on the team, what to expect, kind of as both teams seem to be in a similar circumstance right now as far as record goes. But how are you doing today, Josh?
Doing pretty well. How about yourself?
I'm good, man. So tell me, this UConn, it looks like you guys have had a little bit of a rough stretch recently.
Yeah, there's been a lot of close games that they kind of just can't pull out towards the end. Wichita State was probably the best example at Excel pretty recently. They brought it to double overtime and just couldn't pull it out towards the end. There's been a lot of just small things going not UConn's way lately. They did pull out against Temple and had a pretty solid win very recently, but it's just been tons of little mistakes that eventually lead to these really disheartening losses against teams that I feel like they should either win or be much more competitive against.
Yeah, I think Memphis fans can definitely relate to you on that. You've also had some bad luck with some injuries and some other players just stepping away from the team for personal reasons.
Yeah. Altery Gilbert, the starting point guard, and he's been there for 4 years, but he's been injured for almost his entire career. He played, I believe, 3 games his freshman year and had to redshirt the rest of the year because of shoulder injuries, and had various other shoulder and, I believe, knee injuries. I know some other injury past few years, and then recently he was dealing with some personal and family stuff. So he actually was playing through all the games where a lot of people probably speculated he might have missed, but he continued through it, and he just has not been playing well. And I hate to be, the armchair psychologist, but he, with all the turnovers, and I believe he shot 1 for 8 from the free throw line in a game recently. It seemed like it might be, he's not. He should maybe take some time off. So He did not play his last game. Dan Hurley came out recently and mentioned that he just thought it was best for him to take, some time off. So he's probably going to be questionable for the Memphis game. And I think that's probably best for him in terms of his long-term future and also for the team where, they can kind of focus on that while he focuses on, trying to improve anything that might be going on. And on the injury front, Sid Wilson, he missed the last game with a knee injury. I believe it was a bone bruise or a knee bruise of some sorts. He's a really athletic wing. He originally committed to St. John's before moving over to UConn. He's a really exciting player to watch, and even though he didn't play, he was missed in the last game, as they are pretty thin right now. As another injury happened fairly recently in Tyler Polley, who was originally their starting small forward. He's like a 6'8", 6'9", really good shooter and pretty solid defender. Tore his ACL in practice fairly recently. Yeah. So
that's a tough way to go right there.
Especially in practice,
Yeah.
So when the report came out, it was in practice. People were like, "How do you tear your ACL in practice?" And I'm like, "Hey,
playing basketball, it could happen, I guess.
Ball too hard, that's all you know."
Yeah.
So, but yeah, he's a pretty good player. He doesn't do too much besides shooting on the offensive end, but he does provide pretty good floor spacing, as UConn's a pretty atrocious 3-point shooting team. And he was one lone bright spot in terms of shooting this year. So we're missing him as well. And I know you mentioned injuries and people stepping away, but there's also a few people on the team who are redshirting due to transfer rules. And there's a freshman, Richie Springs, who committed kind of late into the process, and he's redshirting his freshman year to kind of get more ready for his first year at UConn. So it's pretty thin.
They got a lot of stuff going on.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of stuff. As you can tell, I know about a lot of stuff going on with them, and you can speak for hours about everything wrong, but you can speak a lot about everything good for them as well.
Yeah, and one of those things, whether I guess depends your opinion on it, is that UConn's going to be leaving the mighty American Athletic Conference after this year. So what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so it was a great
It
time.
is after this season,
Yes,
right?
it's after this season. Yeah, so they are moving away from the American Athletic Conference. The basketball team is, I believe, football is becoming independent. Basketball is going to the Big East, so it's great for a throwback. I'm actually wearing an old Ray Allen jersey, so yeah,
Cool.
need to remember that. But no, it's good to see that. And I mentioned earlier that, the American actually does have some bright spots towards the top end. You got the Houstons, you got Cincinnati. Memphis has always been pretty solid. And I don't want to, go through the list of all the teams because I'm going to eventually, miss one team. But there's also some people at the bottom who aren't so great. Eastern Carolina. So I won't be missing them. But it's definitely nice to go back to the Big East and kind of get some memories back. But I will miss playing some of the better teams. Houston, like I said, Houston, Memphis, and Cincinnati have always been pretty good games ever since I've started watching UConn more when I, went there for school. So,
Yeah, I mean, UConn was probably one of those teams that the conference was founded around, thinking, this is a big hoop school. We got Memphis and some of these other schools, and then bringing in Wichita State recently.
yes, yeah.
They're like probably trying to build a basketball conference, but it didn't 100% work out, I guess. But, so best of luck to you guys in that. That's exciting. Sometimes being in the American with the bottom half kind of being weaker, it's hard to earn back those. If you take any bad losses, it's really hard to earn back, and you just don't have as many quad one opportunities once you get to your conference play. And then a lot of the conferences are adding those couple more games to their schedule for conference play. So that eliminates, 2 more opportunities for out of conference for a lot of schools. So it places you at a disadvantage if the conference you're in isn't as strong.
Yeah, certainly. And I know if we're getting really into the weeds of the conference, another good thing about moving to the Big East is because the American is so spread out. If you look at just like the actual locations where everything
geographically,
is,
it's crazy.
Yeah, like I have no idea why, Connecticut is all the way up here. Memphis is all the way over there, and then you still got to go to like Wichita, Kansas, and Houston. So just on the players themselves, having to travel that distance all the time.
Yeah,
it's definitely not easy on them. So I think it's probably best. And the American was a good idea, but
we appreciate you bringing a title to us, though. That was very nice of you.
You're welcome.
That was our welcome gift. I don't know what the parting gift is going to be.
I think it'll just be easy wins for you later on this season, like honestly. So,
all right. So speaking of kind of getting into the game a little bit more, the teams on paper have a lot of similarities. It seems like it could end up being a slugfest. So Memphis right now is 15-5, 4-3 in conference. UConn is 11-9, 2-5 in conference. As you mentioned, they had that four-game losing streak.
Yep.
3 of those being in conference, so kind of a tough start there. But offensively, both these teams score a little bit over 70 points, and they both have good defenses. So UConn's a top 50 defense, and both teams really protect the rim well. And you've got a guy averaging over 3 blocks a game on your group.
Yeah, Acock, or Cook. There's been different ways to pronounce his name.
Depends who the announcer is.
Yeah, it changes every time, and you can tell they're looking down and they're reading. So they just make something up on the fly. But point being, he is an incredible athlete and shot blocker. He is incredibly thin, which is another thing they mention every single broadcast. Which kind of gets a little weird and annoying that
you'll hear about Lester Quinones shorts, I'm sure. That's the thing that they always talk about in the Memphis broadcast.
Yeah. I remember hearing that in high school. I think like in like the hoop mixtapes, like people mention that in there. So can't wait to hear, they'll show his shorts and they'll show a Cook's very thin legs every 30 seconds. But he came actually early. He committed middle of last year. Redshirted half the season, and he was actually I believe a top 40 recruit when he did that, and his recruit ranking actually dropped down after that because of the fact he kind of left halfway through a season. But since joining UConn, he's been an incredible shot blocker. He's at, I believe 3.1, but a little over 3 blocks per game, and he also does not foul whatsoever. It's just over 1 foul per game as well.
Wow.
That's usually a big struggle with young defensive-minded guys is they want to, protect the paint or get steals, but they end up drawing fouls. With him, he does not really foul too much. I want to make sure that the numbers are actually accurate with a 1, I believe it's like 1.4 to 1.7 fouls per game. So he just doesn't foul whatsoever. But as good as he is at protecting the rim, he is still pretty thin. So against bigger competition, he does get pushed around pretty easily. But he's good at, the coming over and protecting the paint when someone drives by one of the guards and being the secondary help at the rim. So he's definitely something to look out for in that Memphis game.
Yeah, Memphis is 4th in block rate and UConn is 3rd in block rate. So both teams really protect the rim. As far as defense, UConn's got a top 50 defense. Memphis does as well. How is you mentioned the 3-point shooting for UConn. Memphis doesn't do that very well either.
Oh, it's ugly. So earlier, with Tyler Polley missing the rest of the season with a torn ACL, you miss his biggest skill is his 3-point shooting. And even though Christian Vital, who has been there for 4 years now at the shooting guard spot, has shown times to be a good 3-point shooter, he's down to, I believe, like 30% or so this year. So he's had a pretty fluky career in terms of hitting it from deep. They also have a pretty good young freshman in James Bouknight, another guy who his name changes every time, I try to see online. He reminds me a lot of Zach LaVine, which is already, I'm going out there and comparing, a 18-year-old to a near all-star. I know he missed it, but he's a really athletic guy. He has a pretty solid stroke, but he just does not really shoot a lot at all. So I think if he takes more shots, he has a good enough stroke and good form and whatnot to actually hit his shots, but he just doesn't take it. And outside of, Vital, who has shown in the past to be a good 3-point shooter, and Bouknight, who I believe could be a good 3-point shooter, there just really isn't much outside to, make threes and be a real threat from deep.
It looks like ball protection. Is that also an issue for UConn with the turnover rate nearly 20%? Memphis fans can relate to that. We're at 23%, so if you could just match us, that would be great.
Yeah, and I would not be surprised if it's like that. So there's been plenty of issues, and as mentioned earlier with Tariq Gilbert missing, they actually looked a lot better last game in terms of ball movement and ball security, where they tried to play in the more, modern offense of keeping the ball moving around and trying to find the shooter. And even though there really isn't any shooters, find the open man. But now with Tariq there, it kind of slows down. It goes into ISO ball, and there's more opportunities for turnovers, as well as the starting center in Josh Carlton is an absolute turnover machine. He is just a really big guy, and when he gets the ball, he is not passing it. So it's either going to the rim or it's going out of bounds through a pass. So that's one thing that's a little secret for you.
A little tidbit.
Oh, yeah. Give Josh Carlton the ball, and you're fine because he's not playing too well recently. He actually, I think, shot 50% the last game, but he didn't score for the previous 2 games before that. So, yeah, just, give him space, let him take the ball down low, and then just immediately just play someone defense, and it's either going to be a turnover or a brick. So
So he's the guy that's going to have a breakout game. Got it.
Okay.
That's what happens.
Hey, Team Josh. So
So what's the biggest driver on offense for this UConn team?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is it's an untapped market for them is transition. They've always been a really good at transition team, but they just don't seem inclined to really play in transition. They have good athletes. Christian Vital is averaging over 2 steals per game, and he's always been a really good, pest out there, mucking up the other team's offense by just getting into passing lanes and whatnot. So he is definitely a way for them to create offense. I just don't know why they kind of shy away from it at times, as you have him to kind of lead the break. Bouknight is an incredible athlete, and as well as Aycock. Aycock is also an incredible athlete, so I don't know why they just kind of don't, use that. When it comes to half-court offense, it's kind of sloppy at times. as I mentioned, when Tariq Gilbert was playing, it's a lot of ISO ball, him trying to create shots, and he's just not that great at it right now. I don't know if it's the tons of shoulder surgeries he's had to prevent him from becoming a really good playmaker, or just the fact that there's just not a lot of offensive talent there. It seems like they would have it, but just not really actualized at all.
So knowing all that, what would you say are the keys to the game for UConn to beat Memphis and Memphis to beat UConn? Like what can Memphis do to exploit UConn, vice versa?
Yeah. So from UConn side to win the game, I think just keep up the good defense. They are, like we mentioned, both are really good defensive teams, but UConn just needs to keep up with the defense. Make a Cook or Acock, however you want to pronounce it, make him the strong point of your defense in terms of protecting the paint. With Wiseman, not playing anymore, there isn't that massive guy down there who can really dominate. I know Precious Achiuwa is having a really good season, but he's not the, overwhelming center-sized guy. So I think a Cook, even though he is like 190 pounds, probably at 6'9", 6'10", he probably has a better chance than if it was, Wiseman down there being, 240 plus, who's able to push him around. So I think for UConn, really control it from the defensive end first. And then offensively they need to keep the same kind of ball movement they had in the most recent game against Temple. Temple, they were able to just play free-flowing. A bunch of guys had shot opportunities. It didn't seem like previously where you focused on Tariq, starting the offense, and then he would have the shot. If he didn't have the shot, it'd trickle down to Christian Vitale, or it would trickle down to Josh Carlton. They really played smart and played out of the high post as well. And when they do that, I feel like that's a way for their offense to actually play and be really successful. And for Memphis, like I said, just let Josh Carlton have the ball. Seriously, it's disheartening. He won the conference most improved player last year, or he was like the co-winner of it, and he looked really confident, really good out there. He's a big guy, so he's able to use his strength, but it just seems far too often he just does not play with his size. Like, he tries to get too cute with it. He tries to do too many moves down there, when if he just kind of goes up and uses his size, he'd dominate. But I think just letting him do what he does and let them shoot threes, because they're not going to make their threes really. And they play with energy. They feast off of energies, and use that scene more when they're at home, either at XL or Gamble. But since they're on the road, I think control the energy, and they're just going to get out of it. It's a pretty common issue with them.
Yeah, the home environment in Memphis can be pretty good, especially Memphis fans they're frustrated right now, which is another reason to get worked up during the game. They'll still be at the game because now Memphis is in a different state than we were at the beginning of the year. We have all these super high ideas of ourselves, thoughts of where we're going to go in the tournament. Now we're scratching and clawing for every game. Can't put teams away, but the Memphis fans, to their credit, every game that I've been to this year, they still have brought it, stuck with the guys. They want it just as much as Penny Hardaway wants it. So they're going to be out there yelling for the guys. So hopefully there is some form of home court advantage that takes place, even though did lose on the home floor to Georgia and SMU. That's pretty tough. Yeah. But I don't think that is going to be a recurring thing, hopefully. Hopefully on our side.
Yeah, and I know we have a game in XL a couple of weeks from now, so let's play in the middle, and let's just hope at least XL they'll keep the energy there, so we'll have that for our side. And I want them to win in Memphis, but I'll hope that you have good energy in Memphis as well. So best of both worlds.
And for those of you wondering, so just some rankings. In the net ranking, Memphis is 51, UConn is 87. That's the biggest spread that I was able to find. In KenPom, Memphis is at 59, UConn 71. And then the Bartovic rank, Memphis is 63rd, UConn 68. So much closer in there. They're seems like they're in the same area, at least in most of those ranking services. The computers have them there. It would be if UConn were to beat Memphis, it could end up being a quad one win. Memphis is right on the cusp of falling in that. Well, actually, if it was a away game, so Memphis would most likely finish in that. We hope.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a big game for UConn, a chance to get a statement win in conference play, since that one that hasn't started off super hot.
Yep. Yeah, that, and I feel like I said, there was a lot of games that were, it was very close towards the end that they kind of just lost. So the big win against Temple, where they won by, I believe, 16 points, kind of shows that they're swinging in the right direction. So by losing by like 2 or 3 points every game, and you see a 16-point swing, maybe it's, confidence going their way. Maybe it's, good mojo going their way. And from here on out, they're going to, ride the wave, and maybe beating Memphis is the next step into it. So I think this is a pretty pivotal game. If they win this, they're on a 2-game winning streak, which shouldn't be a real accomplishment, but at this point you can take it. I mean, honestly, it's been a pretty rough season. We lost to St. Joseph's, I believe, and there's the second game, not St. Joe's, like the actual good program, St. Joseph's that DeAndre Bembry went to like 6 years ago or something like that. So, like, seeing that just kind of shows, any sort of win is needed. But, against Memphis, who is a good team, it would really boost, the confidence and hopefully push them higher up the rankings this season.
What were the preseason expectations for UConn?
Yeah, so, I think they're doing a little bit worse than preseason expectations. There weren't a ton. Because of the fact that they're in a transition kind of period. Hurley was hired last season, and they went 16-17. So that was like their first rebuilding year. And so right now they're working on trying to get Hurley's guys in there. So before the season, there was a lot of speculation in terms of how well they would do. I think they were seen as like a fringe kind of March Madness type of team. No one really had them. At least from the UConn fans' perspective, no one thought they were going to be like, oh, we're a lock in there, because of the fact that there's a lot of guys on the team who are from like the old coaching regime. So until I guess Hurley gets his guys in there, and even though I think a lot of the guys who are there from Kevin Ollie are good, it's always best to get guys who you really want and who fit your system. But then they are a very thin team. They lost a scholarship due to some really weird rule that Kevin Ollie broke a few years ago, and that caused them to lose a scholarship down to 12. And then from there, they do have a few guys redshirting due to either transfer. RJ Cole, he's a transfer from, I believe, Howard. He's sitting out right now with a red shirt, as well as Richie Springs, who is redshirting his freshman year. So because of those two factors, I don't think there was massive expectations, but I think they were expecting us to do better. And a lot of those close games against, like Wichita State and Tulane, that we should have pulled out in those situations.
Yeah, having an experience in those games, pays a lot of dividends for sure. So you got any questions for me?
Yeah, so of course, with Wiseman leaving, and he was like the big, guy coming in, who is kind of the guy now, not only in terms of like your number one option, but also the center down low, who's going to stop, the unstoppable force of Josh Carlton and his turnovers.
Well, really the guy who has stepped up the biggest is one you mentioned before, Precious Achiuwa. He's been averaging a double-double. I believe that he still is. He's been the most consistent player for the Tigers. Yeah, he's averaging 15 and 10 right now. And right behind him is DJ Jeffries, a local product from just south of Memphis in Mississippi, right across the state line. He's really a guy that's a big key for the Tigers offense. He's the only other guy averaging in double figures for Memphis. And when he's playing well, Memphis has a chance to be a pretty good team. When he's not playing well, then it's pretty tough. He's a 6'7" wing, very versatile, has long arms, can play multiple positions, played everywhere from the 2 to the 4 this season. So he's a very important person for Memphis. And then those two guys, and then really everyone else has kind of come and gone, had their moments. Lester Quinones he's been very consistent on defense, but his shooting has been very streaky this year. Uh, really, that's pretty much everyone. We thought that we were going to have a very dominant 3-point shooting team with guys like Boogie Ellis, who decommitted from Duke,
I
from
got you.
Duke. Tyler Harris, returning after setting a American Athletic Conference freshman 3-point record. He's been kind of streaky coming off the bench, and then some of the other guys just haven't really materialized as we thought. Our other big man, like physical big man, Malcolm Dandridge, he missed a lot of the season with an injury. So he's played in a handful of games, and he hadn't really got his sea legs under him. He's a very imposing guy. He's 6'9", 250, and he's every bit of its muscle. So once he gets rolling, he's going to be a really valuable player for Memphis. It's just hadn't happened yet. He's had like one good game, but he's really not getting the kind of run. So Precious is playing a lot of center. He's vocalized that he doesn't want to play center because he thinks that's going to impact his draft stock because he won't be playing center in the NBA most likely. And so he and DJ have been playing a lot of minutes down low, protecting that rim. And they've done a good job, obviously, with the field goal percentage that Memphis opponents have, the block rates, all that really are due to those guys.
Yeah, and because I was looking at that, like we said earlier, Wiseman's no longer there, and I was trying to figure out, okay, so who's playing center now? And I was going through their team, and there wasn't, another guy there who looked like a traditional center in terms of like their size. And after like looking up, it looked like Precious was the guy. And I remember him coming out. He actually had UConn, I believe, in his like Final Four or something like that for his teams, and I was very optimistic. I was like, hey. He's from New York and Connecticut. We're really close by, all good stuff. But, goes to Memphis. So win some, you lose some. So in terms of size as well, if we want to tie that to UConn, as I mentioned, Josh Carlton's very large, but the center position besides that, there's not really that much. So while Precious is playing center, it seems, for good parts of the game, it probably won't be too hard for him to really dominate UConn down low because without Carlton, the backup center is Isaiah Whaley, who's about like 6'8", 210. So he plays pretty well physicality wise, but he is like the size of like an NBA small forward essentially. Mm-hmm. And then the other guy, Akok, plays center at times as well, being like 6'9", 190. So once again, he's pretty thin, and Precious is probably about 220, 230 or so.
Yeah, he is very. I mean, I've seen him in person, and he is a very he's a man.
Yeah, he's
20 years old already. Mm-hmm. So he's already physically a lot more mature than these guys, than most of them that we see. He's NBA ready as far as physically.
Yeah, and I think that will really help him a lot because with Akok, I mean, he is a great athlete. He can get up there to block shots, but he struggles with physicality. So when you have someone like Precious out there, I think he can kind of like reduce his impact, at least on a one-on-one perspective. Akok will probably be their best like help side shot blocker, but I think he'll be able to kind of dominate Akok one-on-one. And then for Whaley, even though Whaley he tries pretty hard and I like him a lot, he just is not really big enough. He's 210, 220 is still kind of thin for his size, and being only like 6'8", maybe 6'9". And his wingspan isn't anything like incredible. I think that, I think this might be Precious's like game to really show. Like he has some real skill and real talent to push him towards, the top of the draft.
A problem with Memphis is that in some of these close games towards the end, Precious is the guy. Like you asked me and I said, without hesitation, Precious is the guy. Well, Memphis has struggled to get him the ball even towards the end of the games in situations where you want your best player having the opportunity to make shots. And so against the SMU game, Memphis didn't score in the last 6 minutes. And I don't know if Precious shot the ball or maybe once or twice. But, I mean, that's you just can't have that happen. You got to get the ball to your best player. So if Memphis doesn't do that, they can totally defeat the purpose of him being out there.
True, and maybe UConn, they're very good at playing the passing lanes. So maybe that's a way to kind of negate his strengths. Is Vitale it always seems to be in the passing lanes, and he's so much fun to watch. We're going back to NBA comparisons, Patrick Beverly for him, because he just loves to go out there. He rebounds a ton. He's been their leading rebounder for like 2 or 3 seasons now. Being like a 6'2" guard is pretty incredible. And we're talking about, Carlton is 6'11" or so, 260. He's a fine rebounder, but still Vitale just goes in there and grabs boards, and he also grabs steals and just kind of really mucks up the game. So maybe that's a way for UConn to kind of reduce the best player on Memphis, is just play the passing lanes more. And other guys like James Bouknight is also pretty good in that fashion, as a really, really good athlete. I think if they kind of use both of them as like free safeties and just say, hey, no matter what, just make sure any pass to him is hard. Either help on the double or front him harder, or just get in the lanes. I think that's a real way for UConn's defense to prevail.
Yeah, sounds like we're gonna have could be a very mucked up game.
Oh God,
could be ugly. Some bad shooting, some good rim protection. Who knows what'll happen?
I just don't think if you're going from the betting perspective, betting the over might not be the best option.
I wouldn't suggest it.
Yeah, I've been texting one of my friends about all the games, and every game I just say bet the under, bet the under, bet the under, and of course they hit the over the past 2 times. The last one because they went to overtime, and because of overtime it barely pushed them over. And then this last game, their offense actually looked decent when they had more ball movement in it. So they were able to, I think they scored 78. So that helped in terms of the offense, but a lot of the times it's just a very ugly, you pass the ball around the perimeter for 24 seconds, and then someone has to take a 30-foot jump shot, and it just does not work out. And then defensively, they kind of make teams play in that same kind of type of offense. So, be prepared for a really good defensive matchup.
Yeah, Memphis's set offense has struggled mightily on occasion this season, so we maybe we'll have a game in the 50s or something. I don't know.
Came in for a nice 49-47.
Yeah.
Oh, it's going to be great on a Saturday afternoon.
Was Virginia playing? Or was Virginia on both sides of the ball?
Oh, what's better than Virginia defense?
Cool. Anything else, Josh, before we get out of here?
Not much. Make sure to watch the game for certain. Hopefully UConn can pull it out. And just wishing the best for Tariq at this time. So hopefully he can come back soon when he's feeling better, feeling ready to come back. Until then, hope he's doing well. And in the meantime, let's just get Christian Vitale to really stat pad right now. Get tons of rebounds, tons of steals. I don't know if he'll make the NBA, but I want him to be pro somewhere. And I think if he finishes the season with like 8 rebounds a game and 3 steals, someone's going to give him a pretty nice contract either in Europe or some looks, because I think he's like 6.5 rebounds and a little over 2 steals. So, give him some more opportunity and hope for the best with him.
Absolutely. Well, we want to thank everyone for listening today. Again, you can subscribe to the Barn Burner Podcast Network on Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your shows. Follow us on Twitter at @the_barnburner. I am Zach, and Josh, I appreciate you joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Everyone can check out the-barnburner.com for more podcasts and articles for myself, Josh, and a bunch of other writers. Again, thanks for your time, and we'll see you later.
Yeah, thanks for having me. See ya.